Hello, I'm Jeff Kramer, the author of Infinite Resources, and I'm here with Roger Carlson, the author of the Saving the World Before Breakfast series of books. And together we're saving the world before breakfast. And today being January 4th, 2026, we thought this would be a good episode to put out our thoughts on what we might see in the coming year, our predictions for the future. Um, and we'll start with just a brief introduction of our two guests as well. And out of character, we'll also do a little bit of an introduction for ourselves. So, as I mentioned, I'm the author of Infinite Resources. I'm also the president at Big Time Engineering Corp. You can find my book's website at infiniteresourcesbook.com. And Roger, off to you.
Okay. Yeah, Roger Carlson, Saving the World Before Breakfast series of books and a website, same savingtheworldbeforebreakfast.com, dealing with worries about climate, energy, food supply, and ways to fix them, which would be energy, better agriculture, and uh, innovation, basically to make those things happen. Back to a guest from my neck of the woods here in Southern California, Michael Alexander, who is a PhD in economics, wrote a book available from Amazon of Survive and Thrive on the Witness Stand because he worked for in energy and was often an expert witness on energy related court cases. And you want to introduce Ron?
Ron, would you like to just say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, yeah. My day job is in IT, information technology. I'm a Unix system admin. I'm a science fiction writer. I published a couple of books, Typhoon Time and Escape Velocity, and published different stories in different magazines and I believe 18 short stories. And I talk about near future, and like in this century, but maybe a few decades in the future. I also do have a blog, mostly I write about space and economics, and I also have a degree in economics. And I can say I'm a multilingual, multinational speaker. I, I present if, in a couple of continents and in three countries,
All
And
and
you
right.
also have a podcast.
and a podcast. I have a
Yeah.
podcast called Science Sci-Fi, where I'm talking about how sci-fi is related to real science that happen right now or in the near future.
Excellent. We're ready to hit the future then. So, as far as predictions, we're going to start with maybe about seven different categories and figure maybe about, say, 8 minutes or so on each one. Although one in the middle with the wars, which seem to be developing, that might get more time. So, how about artificial intelligence? What's been happening that people think are the biggest things, and what's going to happen in 26?
Well, I can go ahead if no one else wants to jump in. So I'm a huge fan of Peter Diamandis and the Moonshots and Mindset podcast. So I listen to that fairly religiously. And what we're seeing in AI, I think, is almost unprecedented in terms of revolutionary change. And the thing that's different about this right now is it's like there's no shortage of cash that seems to be available for new AI projects. Basically, the four things that are required for an AI project are the chips, the land and connection to the internet, the money, of course, and the energy to operate it. And the one thing that's the limiting factor is the energy. Um, so that's going to be a huge issue in terms of who's going to be dominant in AI. And it's kind of interesting because the United States, of course, has all these, and the Western world in general. The United States actually is doing better, I think, than Canada and Europe in terms of getting new energy online because they're cutting some regulations. But China, being a government that basically has dictatorial powers, can
Mm-hmm.
put in whatever kind of energy they want, and they are basically expanding everything from hydro, wind, solar to coal and nuclear. So they're going gangbusters. And if energy does end up being the limiting factor, and this is going to play out over several years, of course, but if energy is the limiting factor, China might have an upper hand.
Michael.
I think you're right, but I think there are a couple of interesting developments we have to think about too.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, China has started to look at smaller data set requirements to run an AI model. So we're seeing, I think, in the near future, a move from huge centers, which are the easiest way to work, to smaller systems which can be used by individual corporations, or even in some cases sit on people's desktops. And that's going to give you a very different set of advantages. The other thing which I think is important to realize with AI, though, is that right now we're deluged with too much AI and too little understanding of how to use it. Now, I do a lot of AI modeling and a lot of AI prompting, but realistically, there are a lot of people out there who just think it's a big Google box and don't know what to do with it, and that's why it hasn't shown the kind of returns that people are expecting it to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, it does kind of click in with the rational optimist in England, who was saying that, or he was repeating something, but he said things show up and everybody says they're gaga about it. It's wonderful. It's going to do everything, and then they get like, hey, nothing much is showing up, and they say it'll never do anything, and then suddenly it actually does something. So we're probably in that initial euphoric phase, and there's going to be some stumbles, just like the computer. The gripe was that in the 1990s, computers hadn't increased productivity that much. And then finally, with a little boost from the terror about Y2K, people upgraded their systems, and then it became more productive. So I think there's going to be possibly some more disasters, more lawyers being disbarred from after they submitted briefs that had totally fictitious cases and more things that were just totally wrong and embarrassing people. And not to mention people making fake nudes and that stuff, which is another worry. It's like we're getting less and less where we can actually believe a video now. First, Photoshop was making fake images, but now, Humphrey Bogart can be having a love affair with the uh, the press secretary of the White House because there he is. You can see him, you can hear him. He sounds the same way. Of course, as far as getting to use things, people can have their avatar give their sales presentations flawlessly, and you can say, I'm not really John Limbacher, the AI guru. I'm really his avatar telling it so he can go fishing. Da, 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 da. That's one of the things that they will be doing in short order because some people are doing it.
I think there's going to be a
Yeah.
credibility problem
Mm-hmm.
that exists for news, etc. We get more fake postings from social media to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And now that any idiot can make proving videos or pictures,
Yeah.
we're going to start really wondering what the truth is out there. And that's going to be I think, a serious credibility problem for
Mm-hmm.
corporations, for politicians, etc.
Yeah. I'll speak about two topics. The first one is the geopolitics. What we have right now is a race for AGI, General Artificial Intelligence. And there are different definitions with that. Either that AI will be able to do whatever a human being can do, or whatever the entire
Mm-hmm.
human species can do. And I think we are pretty close to that. And the two main contenders is either the American companies or China. Up until recently, the biggest bottleneck was chips, the advanced chip, mostly the NVIDIA chips that currently are about 90% of the market. Google right now, I develop risk chips that are more limited, but are doing a very good job just for uh, language models. And so the biggest problem we have right now in geopolitics is that the chips are made in Taiwan, most of them, and they required rare earth mineral that in Taiwan, which is maybe one of the reasons why Trump wants to take over Greenland, because they have rare earth minerals over there as well. And Taiwan is very, very close to China. And China wants Taiwan, and if they take Taiwan, then I don't think they will be able to make all the chips because there is require the whole ecosystem that exists in Holland, in the States. NVIDIA, it's in the States.
Exactly.
Uh, but the bottleneck right now is, so it's still a big problem in that the production is done in Taiwan. We're trying to very hard to move it to elsewhere, mostly to the US, a little bit to Israel and other places.
Or
Data
at least
center, they
spread
are
it
built
out so it isn't
by that.
all from Taiwan.
There are a lot of data centers are being built right now in the Middle East, in Qatar, and the Saudi Arabia and Dubai, because they have the energy. And what I predict, but maybe it's not for you, but a little bit further away in the future when it comes to. So right now, Jeff is right that the bottleneck is moving from chip production to energy. We need more energy to run all these data centers. And so near future, 2, 3, 5 years, it's probably going to be natural gas. In the future, it will probably be renewable and nuclear, either fission or fusion. And I think AI will help solve fusion and fission, small modular reactors. So development time, instead of taking a few more decades, will take a few more years. So maybe in a decade, we will be able to start moving to other energy sources. China is already doing a great job with renewable, mostly solar.
Okay. All right. We'll
Yeah.
actually, we've got to cheat and give a little bit more. That's something that Jeff likes to talk about. Canada has one big resource. They're really cool, man. In fact, they're icy cold. And so he said, hey, if you want to have a data centers, do it there with the difference in temperatures between cold Arctic air and the liquid water. But people
Yeah,
have to look on the website on Infinite Resources to find out about that. And we
right.
will get back to Taiwan because our fourth topic is possible wars.
Yeah.
But for an interlude here, how about the
Do you mind
world?
if I just make two quick comments on
Okay.
what was said?
Mm-hmm.
So interesting, the global supply chains were brought up, and you may know that China was prevented from accessing the high-end NVIDIA chips. And that, I think, may have been a mistake on the part of the United States, because whereas all of us or the current supply chain is dependent on a global network, China has been forced now to essentially build their own network, and that's going to be completely internal to China as much as possible. So they may end up having an advantage because of that short-term decision. The other thing that is kind of humorous, but when you said fake news earlier, Roger, it sounded to me like you said fake nudes, and the example you gave works for both.
It did. Actually, I did do nudes, but fake news goes along with it. So yes, it's both. Actually,
Yes, but
maybe we could leave the economy for later, and because we're drifting into it. I got two topics: the drone revolution in warfighting and all the wars that are starting. So I'd like to leap in on the drone revolution because it's, as a number of people have said, it's been very much like the evolution of aerial warfighting, airplanes in and dirigibles in World War I, where it started out with reconnoitering, and then it went to pistols and rifles, then machine guns going through, and then bombing. Well, drones have done exactly the same thing, where a country that had virtually no navy chased the Russian Black Sea out of the Black Sea, and it gets back to AI as things have evolved with different things. First person view drones could only go so many miles before they'd lose contact with their author. There was uh, uh, fiber optic cables extended another like 10 or 15 kilometers to where there's those spider webs, a very science fictionist, surreal landscape in many areas. And now artificial intelligence, AI, has been used to train them, the the drones, to find, uh, to know the map to where they're supposed to go. I turn left at this bridge. I do this, that, and this is a tank. This is an ambulance. I will attack the tank. We are approaching Skynet sorts of things. And of course, my thought is, if Ukraine wins, that's nice. Maybe we should follow it for any wars we might get into. But if Ukraine loses, the United States and Europe has got to scoop up as many Ukrainian technicians as possible, because otherwise Putin and Xi will have a technology that is the equivalent of what tanks and airplanes did in World War II, because the evolution has been faster with the drones, and it's an incredible thing. Of course, in passing, a $10 billion golden battleship, $10 billion battleship for $10 billion. How many tens of thousands of drones can you swarm on a battleship? Much like
Yeah.
80 years ago, on April, in April, the biggest battleship in Earth, one of the two that survived, the Yamato, went out on a desperate mission to try to save Okinawa for the Imperial Japan. 396 planes swarmed it and destroyed it in 2 hours' time. That was 80 years ago. So AI drones can do more. Anyway, that was a 3 minute spiel. What anybody else commenting on drones?
Yeah, I think that was a great summary of the whole thing. Yeah, obviously, it's kind of like NASA's slogan, faster, cheaper, better. And
Mm-hmm.
so drones, of course, keep your people out of harm's way as much as possible. They're
Mm-hmm.
inexpensive. They can be either kamikaze style or they can be reusable, depending on how you
Mm-hmm.
want to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely revolutionary in many respects. I should also mention, though, Ukraine has got a huge benefit in that they have access to Starlink, and so they're able to extend their drone reach into the Mediterranean. And recently, we've seen attacks in the Caspian
Mm-hmm.
Sea as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have some technological advantages
Yeah.
working with the
Deep in
CIA and spy
Siberia,
networks.
an air base, that was the original spider web about a year ago now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is where we see the convergence with AI. Yeah. So I know in Ukraine, okay, let's start first with war in general. So we used to have three arenas: land, navy, sea, and air. Now we also have space and cyberspace. And why I'm talking about
Mm-hmm.
cyberspace, because this is very related to drone. And I know
Mm-hmm.
that Ukraine right now, especially the short range, up to 5, 6 kilometers, like with the front lines, the drones are not even using they don't use Starlink or any communication that could be interrupted or captured by Russia.
Mm-hmm.
They use fiber optics, so they're flying it with fiber
Hmm.
optics. The long range, you have to do it either with AI that is pre-programmed in advance and they complete the mission themselves, or with radio communication or laser communication. But the short range, they are using fiber right now
Hmm.
to be able to intercept.
Repeater drones is another thing they're going. But of course,
And
somebody can
and
shoot it, the repeater drone.
and China, yeah. So China, I heard they were building a drone mothership. It's a big drone that go long range, and then it
Yes.
launch small drone for short range.
Hmm.
This is an interesting concept, maybe similar to the aircraft carrier.
And a
And
ship at
there is
sea that's also a mothership.
there are some companies right now that are trying to develop technology how to deal with drones. One of them is in Israel. They have something laser system. I forgot the name of it. That could
Hmm.
hit very high interval. It could intercept like dozens in a few seconds.
Hmm.
Another one that is developed in the States, they're using microwave. So, but
Yeah.
that's just take down everything in the
Hmm.
area.
Hmm. And the counter would be more resistant drones to resist the microwave and or swarming to, uh, unless the lasers get super better, they'll overheat. And if you have 50 drones coming at the laser
Or thousands of drones.
or thousands.
Yeah. So I think Ron made a good point, and you did as well earlier, Roger, talking about the battleship. But what is the Navy of the future going to look like? And can we have a traditional Navy anymore? Obviously, if you have a country that doesn't have drone technology, then of course the Navy works the same way that it has. We're seeing Venezuela being successfully blockaded by the United States right now. Um, but in a world where drones can be shipped one way or another to a battlefront, it can completely change the balance of power.
Mm-hmm.
And a $14 billion aircraft carrier, could be sunk by a few $1 million worth of drones.
It
Or
also
hypersonic.
it
Mm-hmm.
also leads to a world where strategy changes because historically large numbers of soldiers or military personnel has been a major advantage. As you get more and more into a drone uh, distant structure, then the numbers are not the real guiding influence. And smaller countries, in terms of militaries, may start to have significantly different advantages.
Yeah, maybe.
I think the big country will have the advantage, those who have control over AI.
Yeah, and if a country can get to artificial general intelligence, which essentially means that they could take over your artificial intelligence systems, then it's game over, right? Checkmate.
Yeah. Well, the Ukrainians did that to some extent when they hit the Kerch Bridge a couple times or one time. They had pictures of it because obviously they'd hacked the Russian camera system that was watching the bridges. So if they'd hacked that. They had a lot of other stuff. Meanwhile, and that does get us into the war in general. How about we'll give 10 minutes on that one? And we've got wars all over the place. Does anybody want to start with their favorite war or least favorite war?
Well, the one which is closest to my uh, heart right now is the potential for war between China and Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
Closest because my in-laws live in Taiwan. And
Mm-hmm.
Russia and China has made a strong effort to build up their forces and their ability to attack Taiwan, which we're still trying to figure out exactly what year they're going to strike. But for a while, I thought that 2024 was going to be the key year. 2026, as we get all of the mess going around with an American votes and everything else, is going to be an interesting year for us to figure out how we can respond. Although China has officially stated that 2027 is the year they want to have sufficient military power. So it's not quite clear. That said, it's going to be interesting to see. We just talked about Taiwan's importance in the AI world. And given that wars tend to occur where key resources are important, that makes Taiwan a much more valuable target. And I'll also go ahead, just because I talked about resources, if you'll forgive me here, but I think historically, if you look at wars, they happen because we want resources more than we want land. If you look at the Israel-Arab wars, a lot of them, the tactical resources that they've been attacking have been aquifers, not oil sources, because in the Middle East, aquifers are more important. The recent attack on Venezuela occurred because we want their oil. Donald Trump has made that very clear. Is there a threat to Greenland because of its resources in rare earth and minerals? Yes. And I think the United States is looking in a number of places for rare earths and making threats based on that. I think that's part of why they want Greenland. So I see, as we become more and more resource constrained, an increased probability of conflict.
Yeah. And as a side note, the Venezuela was also assisting with Russia's shadow fleet of or ghost fleet of ships that had no official identification, wouldn't tell where they were going, or had false papers, and one of the safe harbors for them to go to was Venezuela. So again, yeah, that's a resource for Russia because they were using their resources of oil and gas. And interestingly, contrary to many predictions, 50 years ago, when the oil crises were going on, we're not running out of oil and gas. The supplies are increasing. So when Russian oil and gas are getting cut off, it didn't cause a super crisis in Europe. It's been tougher on Europe, but it's still going on. And of course, the worry is what happens when two fools put their names on a piece of paper and peace breaks out? Suddenly the price of oil may totally collapse.
Yeah,
I'd just like to, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
You want me or you?
You go ahead.
Okay, good. Okay, so I disagree with what Michael said. I don't think the main reason for wars currently is resources. I'm originally from Israel, and I remember in the 1990s in university when I studied economics, back then King Hussein of Jordan was saying that the main war in the future will be what you said, water, the source of the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee. Water is the problem. This is the conflict between Israel and Jordan and Syria and Israel. And
yeah,
the
so
economists,
Ethiopia
yeah,
with the Nile,
but
China with Tibet,
right
those
now,
rivers.
the Israelis had the different opinion. Said no, we will be distillation factory. We will give Jordan whatever water they want. Yeah, take the water from the Jordan. We'll give you. Will be distillation factories across the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. And then what they do, they take the water from the ocean and distill them, make them fresh water that is good for drinking. It costs about $1 per cubic meter, which is 1,000 liters. So it's a lot cheaper than the mineral bottle you buy in the store. And so it's not good enough, it's not cheap enough for agriculture, but drinking water, or bath water, swimming pool, there is no problem at all. The only matter is to build the distillation plants. I know that Saudi Arabia and the Emirates are also building. They have a lot of water that coming from the Persian or the Arab Gulf, and they make fresh water from the sea. I don't know why California is not doing it.
It's
But
political hot potato, yeah.
Yeah, we're in
If I can,
California, and I don't know why California is not doing it. They even shut down a distillation plant, I believe, down
I would
by
also like to take a counter view to what Michael said with regard to Greenland. So, yes, obviously the United States would love to get the rare earth minerals from Greenland. But you may remember a few years ago, Joe Biden came to Canada and talked to our parliament and said, Canada, you've got a lot of rare earth minerals, and we would be happy to invest in building mines to get access to those things. And Greenland is the same. The Danes have never said no if the US requested to build a military base. There used to be a lot more military bases in US military bases in Greenland than there are today. And they've been shut down over the years because of cutbacks and so forth. And it would be the same thing, I'm sure, for access to the minerals. If the Americans wanted to go in and develop the resources, there's no reason why the Danes would stand in their way, as far as I can tell. As long as reasonable environmental precautions and things like that were taken care of. So,
and reasonable payment.
yes, of course.
Well, we're talking about 2026 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. In the long run, there are a number of things that could be worked out. But right now, we have a aggressive president, and he's not trying to negotiate on the same kind of level that you're talking about, Jeff. So in the long run, yes. In the short run, it is a matter for concern.
I'll agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
and building supply chain and factories and processing plants, that takes years. So for the next few years, we are dependent on China. If I may add one more thing about China,
Mm-hmm.
they are now have a much better capacity to build shipbuilding than the US. I think about
Yeah.
200 to 1. Like for every tonnage that the US can build, China can build 200. It's not as bad if you add Korea and Japan, other countries, but China have a huge advantage. And another advantage they have is other than the rare earths mineral. I think I lost my train of thought. Okay, so
That's
leave
all
it.
right.
Maybe it will come to me.
Yeah, I'll give another
Yeah,
one
yeah.
while you're
Just
thinking about it.
just a quick story.
Okay.
The US is currently depends on China for supply chain to build their weapons. I know that there is a subcontractor for Tomahawk missile is in China. So practically the US cannot conduct long-term war against China because they
Mm-hmm.
need China to build their own weapons.
Yeah, they've been sneaking in. Before I retired, I was working with a group that did they would test parts and things. And one of the things that they would track down is a subcontractor had a subcontractor was where? China? No, no Chinese parts go in our weaponry system for a reason because they put back doors and things. And
It's not
so,
just backdoor,
like
it's supply line.
our
The way
solar panels apparently have kill switches. So if we get in a war with China, somebody in Beijing pushes a button and suddenly the solar panels don't work. Oh,
they can just stop selling, and if they
oh.
stop selling
Mm-hmm.
supply to the US, then
Mm-hmm.
the US will not be able to build weapons to
Yeah.
fight
Meanwhile,
China.
sorry, we have to stop all the wars. We ran out of our 10 minutes, so the wars have to stop now. So, how about let's see, we got wars. Now we could do the world economy crash or boom, and so guess we have two PhDs here. Maybe Michael, you want to lead off as an economist and see if you have any, if you have your Ouija board handy, or if you have any other insights for 2026.
I think, speaking as an economist, speaking as a forecaster, frankly, it's very tough to predict where we're going to be at in a near term, partly because a lot of the world depends upon the United States to lead the economy. And like most economists, I am trained to think about how an economist thinks.
Mhm.
The man who is primarily driving the US economy right now is not an economist.
Mhm.
And I'm not taking any sides on whether he does is right or wrong, at least not in this paragraph. But what I'm telling you is he's not going to do what the economists expect.
Mhm.
And so we can't forecast adequately what's going to happen because it's a huge wild card.
Mhm.
Now, I think we're going to see, as long as tariffs or licenses or whatever rhetoric we choose to use to define them goes on, that it's going to be more expensive to buy things in the US, and that will increase US production, yes, not as much or not as cheap as having bought things internationally. In fact, before this conversation started, you and I, Roger, were talking about tariffs and the fact that Temu used to provide a lot of things inexpensively, and I'm using a speaker I got from them for next
Mhm.
to nothing, which I couldn't do again. So a lot of the rest of the world is going to change where they purchase things from, where they sell them things to, and the supply chains are going to change
Mhm.
seriously. But exactly what's really going to happen is going to depend a lot upon a man who is a real estate developer, not an economist,
Mhm.
and that's going to leave a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm also an economist. I can speak a little bit, but I don't have a PhD. It's like first degree, but I liked reading about it a lot.
Mhm.
And what I remember from my degree is that we learned about many economic models, but there was only one model that was correct. All the other models failed, and that was chaos theory. So you cannot predict the future. That's the only thing you can predict with a certainty. Now, with this proviso, what I can try to predict is there are one trend that is going to make the economy really, really good, another one that we may collapse Western civilization. I'll start with the bad news. The US dollar is in decline. It was the global reserve currency, and right now it's slowly being replaced by gold. And the reason for that is that China, mostly BRICS country, China, India, after the 2012 when the sanctions were put on Iran, and more when sanctions were put
Mhm.
on Russia, and Russia was taken out of the SWIFT system, and now with Trump that's trying to put tariffs about everyone, especially on India. I think this is probably his biggest mistake. That's alienating India and putting India, that was pretty hostile to China, together with China. So right now the big economies, the biggest growing economy in the world, maybe the biggest is the US, but other than the US, they are trying to divert and staying away from the dollar. And currently they buy gold. I think that in the far future, maybe it will be also Bitcoin, but currently it's mostly gold. And I think probably China wants to create a new reserve currency that will replace the dollar and be based on gold, because that's what people trust. And another trend that is pretty bad in the West is debt and spending. And in almost all example, I think 13 out of 14 cases, when debt reached 130% of the GDP, there was some kind of civil war or a war. And the only exception to that is Japan. Japan was then managed to get to this level of debt ratio between debt to GDP, and they managed to stay stable. And the US, I believe right now it's 122%, very, very close to the 130. So Trump did some things that are good, and some things that are bad.
Mhm.
The big beautiful bill is of course very bad because it increased spending.
Mhm.
Uh, so this is a very bad trend that may cause collapse, civilization, even to the level of civilization collapse, that the US will break into countries that fall into civil war or global world war when other power try to challenge the US. Uh, Good news is we go back to AI. AI is going to create a huge amount of efficiency, and
Mhm.
we may be able to drag ourselves out of economic collapse because of increase in efficiency, despite what the politicians
Mhm.
are trying to do. And I'm not blaming the politician. The politician, I mean, I'm blaming them to cause the debt, but they do it because they want to be elected. And the way to be elected is to give things to the public, give present, give stuff to that the public wants. And in order to give stuff to the public, they need to take debt.
Mhm.
That's the
So
cycle.
if I can just jump in with a couple of comments, I'll just start out by my layman's perspective on U.S. tariff policy. And that's just basically looking back at history. In the Great Depression, the United States tried to isolate themselves from the world economy, and it just made things worse. And I think we're going to probably see a repeat of that. But I'm an engineer, not an economist, but I'd like to quote something that I thought was quite smart from the former chief economist at the Alberta Treasury branches, which is basically a provincial owned bank here in Alberta. And he says, if you want a GDP forecast for 2026, there are plenty out there. They're free and they're also completely useless. In fact, they're a bit dangerous. If we actually believe the forecast, we plan around it, and it's going to be wrong. I'm not trying to disrespect my fellow forecasting economist. I was one for nearly 30 years. The problem is today's economy is unforecastable. Here's what we will almost certainly face in 2026. Trade relations between Canada and the United States will remain strained. We are not going back to free trade as we've known it, maybe ever. Geopolitics, including tragic wars and violence, will continue and likely intensify. Global economic power and influence is shifting away from the United States. Artificial intelligence will continue to pose enormous risks both for the stock market and for companies that fall behind. Climate change and extreme weather events are not going away.
Mhm.
Central banks will walk a delicate line balancing inflation pressures and the threat of a weakening economy. So that's from Todd Hirsch. Like I said, he's the former chief economist at
Mhm.
ATB, and I think those are all valid points.
I take it he's not the president of Optimists International?
You know, we've had him come and speak at our professional association meetings a few times, and generally he's had a fairly optimistic take on things. But yeah, I think he's looking at what's going on right now and just trying to say it's a shit show. So
Well, many people have said we're on the edge of doom before, as the saying goes. The guy that predicted seven of the last two sell-offs on the market. And that
Probably
gets
Michael
us to
Berry.
another one. Okay, so we'll dismiss that. And how about, yeah, we had economics, wars, and speaking of, whoops, I'll start us off again. The is my subversive thing, the fall of climate alarmism, net zero, which actually might help things because everybody says the climate is ready for doom. They started saying that in the second half of the 1970s. And we're talking half a century ago, yeah, along with the Club of Rome. And we've been saying that, and that, along with actually another economic catastrophe of bringing massive waves of undocumented immigrants into various countries in Europe and in the United States. And both of those things have been unpopular. We're going to shut down the nuclear plants. We're going to shut down the coal plants. But Joe Biden promised to a little girl in his campaign back in 2020 that he was going to stop all oil well drilling, which is, of course, is insane. As Blackoff Smill, who's now a Canadian, I believe, said, after like 40 years of trying to change things, they've managed to cut down, increase the alternate energy usage by about 2%. So it wasn't going to happen. And the the issue with the alternate energies is they tend to be diffuse, so they have to be far away from major centers, and that makes them expensive. It makes them a major use of copper, and opening a copper mine takes 10 to 15 years. So with these issues, that's probably why the Biden administration did a 180 on nuclear. So one of the few things the Republicans and Democrats agree on now is that nuclear should be restarted, including Diablo Canyon in California, which now got renewed up to 2045. And Gavin Newsom, our governor, was even quietly in agreement with that. And he'd been one of the people trying to kill it. So one of the pluses for economics is people are going to drop a lot of the barriers to doing new things, like fire the bureaucrats. Shakespeare said, "Kill all the lawyers." Well, apparently the Doge thing is shoot half the bureaucrats, and that has a major release of things. There might be a little more pollution here and there, but they're going strong. And the fact with the thing about immigrants, crime, scandal, price of gas and electricity in England going through the roof, people sneaking out of the woods in Germany and chopping down their beloved forests so they won't freeze in the winter. All these things are happening, and that's caused a major drop. In fact, Bill Gates in late October said, I believe that for the most part, people will thrive everywhere despite climate change. Maybe we should work on more important things like health, like maybe finding a cure for malaria. This is great, but of course, a couple of years ago, he said that global warming was going to be worse, 5 times worse than COVID. Well, now the world has changed, and so that could help the economy, and that would be the thing. Like, hey, do we want the economy to tank, or are we going to keep using coal, as China is doing, while saying they will change? It's like, no, they're building a new power plant every 2 or 3 weeks. It's going online, and in fact, they buy old power plants that people in their wondrous idealism says we're going to get rid of coal, dirty coal. Fine, they shut down their plant, they sell off the old plant, it's rebuilt in China or India. And there's contractors. I met one, an Arab construction company mogul, and he said, so I just shut the thing down and break it up, or do I dismantle it and ship it overseas? It's a business decision, one way or the other. So this is a major thing that's happening, and it will cause nuclear to increase. Although it's another desperate thing. First, it was desperate nuclear, then nuclear was slammed, then it was desperate alternate energy, which has not succeeded tremendously yet, although they're doing much better than they were in the 70s and the first push, and when the when the windmill pieces were flying in all directions, and you could still make a tax profit by writing it off. But
I
the world is
I
changing.
think I disagree with you on several of those issues. I certainly we're going to see fossil fuels being used for, I think, well past 2050. I'm not predicting that we're going to see the demise of fossil fuels anytime soon, probably long after I'm dead.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I take a little bit of issue with in what you said is that the renewables aren't making a change. And China, of course, is making a huge push towards renewable energy. Yes, they are building those coal plants right alongside the solar plants and the wind farms and the hydro plants. But they have a plan to eventually get off of the coal by 2060.
They have a
Yeah.
plan to tell the simpletons that they're going to get off of it.
Yeah.
And that way they can advance their economy and get the gold, including gold from Russia to help fight the war.
Well, okay, you might not believe their plan, but I think that their plan is going to be more successful than the United
Mm-hmm.
States plan because, with energy policy in the United States basically fluctuating with each new administration,
Mm-hmm.
the economics, ultimately, clean energy will win because it's less expensive than fossil
And more
fuel to
abundant.
operate and for and not as polluting. And we're also developing newer technologies,
Mm-hmm.
like we were talking about rare earth minerals. We were talking about, we haven't talked about battery technology, but there's many types of technology that help to get rid of the problem that solar and wind have had, the intermittency issue in terms of production. If you can get a reliable, inexpensive way of storing that energy and you're able to produce it less expensively, then it's going to win out every time. And
well, it will when they get the next generation, maybe several generations further on.
yeah,
But right
well,
now, it's still too expensive and too inflammable with lithium batteries. You got to go past lithium.
yeah, and there's many different battery technologies that are being developed, as well as capacitors and all sorts of other things, and gravity batteries and thermal batteries, all sorts of stuff. So I did share a website that you can take a look at. But even in the United States, a lot more renewable energy is being put into place than carbon based, and that was, of course, with the Biden. I forget what act it was called, but basically they were promoting clean energy, but even without those government incentives, it makes more economic sense to go with an energy source that basically is just blowing in the wind or falling down in the sunlight.
I think
And the other thing that you said that I think is definitely wrong, you were talking about copper. The large transmission lines that you see are made out of aluminum, not copper, and there's no shortage of aluminum. So
I think you've got to realize as we go through this, and I think I see the infinite resources in your book there, Jeff, so I'll put you to begin with. But I think one of the problems that the Roger mentioned the limits to growth model, the Club of Rome, which was fundamentally flawed, and it's how I got my start as an economist, actually making fun of it. It's fundamentally flawed because the concept is that population growth is exponential, which we know at this point isn't true, and I'm going to talk later about the population issue, and that resources only exceed in a linear fashion. And the fact of the matter is, innovation consistently has changed the mathematics considerably.
absolutely.
And the resources we were going to run out of, no matter what we did by 1980, according to the books that I was reading when I was in college, simply hasn't happened because
Population
it becomes
boom.
less expensive to dig them up. I think a lot of the problem as we talk about resources is, and I'm not going to argue with you about aluminum versus copper, But we're seeing in the on the electric energy world that actually capacity is becoming much more of a constraint and much more expensive than the actual generation of the kilowatts. And that's something which is messing up the whole US approach to the problems, is we're not necessarily looking at brown fields versus green fields versus everything else. And actually, one of the things that was killing solar power here in California was that Congress passed a law saying you couldn't put up solar farms in forests, which meant that they told us that we had to use solar farms, but they also told us we couldn't put them up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just plain sloppy rulemaking, and it's a serious problem. I think you're absolutely right. We are using more renewable, non-conventional sources than we were before. And I think pollution is something we have to consider. But I also will agree that we need to develop a plan for siting, and we're not doing that yet. And that's going to lead to a cost problem, which right now is the Republicans' main concern about energy, not the other issues. They just don't want prices to go up, and prices are going to have to, the way we're working it right now in the US.
And people get angry when utility prices go up. They say they want to change the climate, but are you willing to pay an extra 50 a month in your utility bill? No. You've made enemies all over the place.
Well, I also want to just say, and this is one of my favorite quotes, of course, it has to be, it's mine. If Machiavelli were writing today, he'd be writing about electric utilities.
Yeah, so maybe I'll do you have time for me to talk?
Yeah, go ahead,
I
John.
talk a little bit. First of all, climate change is real. Like we know the physics of body of space and greenhouse. If greenhouse go up, then less energy going out than the energy coming in. So the planet will warm, or the body will warm until it emit more infrared radiation, and the balance will go up. And yeah, so greenhouse is important because without it, the temperature was about 35 degrees lower than what it is now. But if you increase them, temperature will go up. So we know it is true. But there's a but. The but is that first of all, it's not emergency. We probably have decades. I think the temperature will go up between 1.5 and 4 degrees in 100 years, and that's probably not a catastrophe. It will have a lot of impact, but
Yeah.
it's not the end of the world, and we have time. The two other ideology I want to talk about, the growth and net zero. So both of them are, at least from the economic point of view, are catastrophe. Net zero, I think that some of the point that Ada talked here. What the UK did, they basically closed out heavy factories in the UK. They were shipped to either India or China, or new one were built there. And then they build, and all the pollution is global, it's not in the UK, was emitted in China or India, and then they use container ship that use diesel to ship them all the way back to the UK. So it actually used more pollution than the intention, but they had less pollution in the UK, something to brag about. But and
Yeah.
second thing is Germany. Germany also, they closed all the nuclear power plants, and they even do it after Russia already invaded Ukraine and there was supply chain issue with natural gas, and they tried to come to Canada to buy natural LNG project to ship it. We said no, it's no business case for that.
No, our
And-
prime minister said that.
And now
Yeah,
the
we can't
US
blame
is
Jeff
starting
for
with-
that.
A couple of quick
And,
thoughts, Ron. Number one, when
yeah.
you talk about temperature changes, you should make sure we know whether you're talking about centigrade or Fahrenheit for our
Celsius.
U.S. calculus.
Yeah, it's
Second,
Celsius.
but Second of all, you raise a very interesting point.
Mhm.
We talked about the price of energy in this country, but that also affects global production and increases the desirability of off shipping to or outsourcing construction and production to countries which are producing energy more cheaply.
Including the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, if we go back to Germany, they closed the nuclear reactor. They couldn't get natural gas that they needed, so they reopen coal power plants because they don't have a choice. So they damage their own industry, they raise the price, and they emit more CO2 because of coal power plants that had to be
I,
put
I,
together.
I certainly don't understand that political thinking at all. I mean, who are they trying to help? They're the Greens, and the Greens should be the ones that are up in arms the most about
Mhm.
replacing nuclear
There was
with.
a big resistance for nuclear that started in the 1970s. I did an interview with Robert Zubrin on my channel,
Mhm.
and he wrote a book about the nuclear energy. So basically, in the 1970s, the US was able to build a water-powered nuclear reactor,
Mhm.
and so water cooling, I think it's uh, nuclear reactors, and they
Yeah,
were
light
safe.
water
They were,
reactors and pressurized water
yeah,
reactors either.
pressure water. So they were safe. Like they have, if you stop it, the nuke stop maintaining it, it will drop down. Unlike the Chernobyl, that you actually have to do some action to stop it down. So they were safe. The worst was
Oh,
the
yeah,
Six
that's
Mile Island, and
yeah. Three
that
Mile
one,
Island was one of them,
3 miles, yeah,
and
that one killed no one. No one was killed. It caused
mhm.
about $1 billion damage, but it was very cheap. And then they started to put a regulation in the 1970s. So a nuclear plant that used to cost $1 billion and took 4 years to build, now takes 16 or 18 years to build and cost about $30 million. So, and it's not that people will become more lazy, it's the overregulation. And Clinton,
Mm.
Al Gore was very, very anti-nuclear. Greenpeace, what was it, Sierra Club, where I don't know, maybe there is suspicious that maybe they were paid by the oil and gas industry, but they push for a lot of nuclear regulation that makes nuclear energy nearly impossible in the US. In China, it's a lot cheaper to build nuclear facility than in India, so that's where most of the production is happening,
Mhm.
and maybe in the US they will start building more nuclear facilities.
Yeah, well, that does get to like the small modular reactors. The idea being, as uh, Ron was touching on there, there's especially the liquid salt reactors. They have a freeze plug, and the refrigerator, high temperature refrigerator, is keeping it just warm enough so it doesn't melt. But if the power goes out, the refrigeration stops, temperature rises, plug melts, and the fuel drains out into a drain pan. Uh, and when that happens, it no longer has critical mass. And so there's uh, one defense mechanism there. Second, they have better alloys. They have more temperature resistant alloys. I said, our technology, you just can't compare it to even when back at Island days. And then, of course, the other thing was the American reactors always had a dome on them, whereas in the Soviet Union, in a planned socialist economy, they would have no accidents, so they didn't have a dome, and that's where Chernobyl, one of the worst accidents, short of Kishtim, which was a storage issue, also in the Soviet Union, but the biggest reactor fire and explosion was because they didn't have that basic safety feature.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
Fukushima was a tsunami and earthquake. So, and also nobody directly killed from the accident. The only people who died is because the rescue team were told not to approach the area. So that's why people died.
yeah, traffic accidents during a mass evacuation of huge number of people. So, hey,
So
actually, we
don't build
could,
huge reactor in area that are prone for earthquake.
yeah, or don't put your emergency generator in the basement when you have an area prone to tsunamis. Uh,
Yeah, they
anyway,
could have thought that one out better, that's for sure.
mm-hmm. It
But
may well.
and just if for the sake of the engineers out there, we do these calculations all the time. What's the cost benefit analysis? So and so many people have to die before you change a light system to an overpass or whatever. So if they were looking at this tsunami, which was possibly a 1 in 500 year kind of event, they you're doing the calculus and figuring out, okay, well, we're going to have a slight risk there. The risk is very low, but it exists, and we make these decisions all the time. I mean, you get on an airplane. We have very tight tolerances. The safety factor on the brake systems is only something like 2.2. They're designed for one braking incident, and then they have to be replaced. And so when it comes to designing a plant like that, we got some lessons learned now. We can take that into account for the next time, but don't be too hard on those guys. I think in general, out of all the nuclear plants that Japan had, only one of them was destroyed by that tsunami. So
I'd like, as a statistician, just to make a small comment.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about 1 in 100 year events or 1 in 500 year events, and they're actually based on a misunderstanding of the actual bell curves. I'm not disagreeing with you here, Jeff. I'm just saying that that's something which people constantly are faced with. How could we have two 1 in 100 year events in the same time period? And the answer is because the bell curve isn't really correct.
yeah, we saw the same thing with flooding in southern Alberta. We had two floods within like 5 years, and they were, one was like a 1 in 100 year event, one was a 1 in 350 year event, but they happened within just a few years of each other.
Or the 200-year flood in California, which is that last one was about 1860 when Governor Stanford, of university name later on, he had to take a rowboat to the state capitol building to be sworn in because there was a huge flood, covered maybe about a quarter of present day places, like a quarter of Los Angeles today was underwater. Sacramento, of course, had large areas underwater, and they happen roughly every 200 years. But hey, we could be having one this year. The atmospheric river. It's not. It's not the new normal. It's the everyday normal, and it probably roughly every 200 years. But it might be this year. It might be 300 years from the last one. It's the stats are just a probable thing, but not super probable. It's written in stone. Meanwhile, we try going on to the population bomb or implosion. Back in 1968, Paul Ehrlich said the population bomb was going to hit, and Mexico and India were just lost causes. We shouldn't help them, whatnot, and they're just going to be lost causes. In fact, he didn't think England was going to be there after the year 2000. So, you think there's anything? What do you think is happening with our present conditions of population?
Well, the opposite. We are going into population collapse right now in all the Western world and also the Eastern world. The fertility rate is below replacement level. On the OECD, all the countries other than Israel are below replacement level. And I think India and Mexico are at replacement level. Everywhere else, it's below. The only place that the population is still not to growing population, the fertility level is going up, is in Africa. That's the only place that is significantly still going up, but that's also the trend is going down. So they probably have another generation. So that's not that the population is going to shrink anytime soon because life expectancies go up and young children are still being born. But in the long run, whenever the new generation is smaller than the previous generation, eventually the population become extinct. That's also from chaos theory. There's a formula. If you know the rabbit and fox, how they go, but whenever the birth rate is below replacement level, the population will eventually become extinct.
The
So I don't know if
economics of having children has very much changed. Statistics show, for instance, that the higher the education level of a family, and particularly of women, the less children they're going to have. Well, of course, if you have a highly educated female, she can go out and get a good job, or she can stay home, be less stimulated, and raise children. Basically speaking, as the world becomes more educated, you're going to see women having less desire to simply have children. Similarly, as the United States is showing, the cost of running a family with one income is becoming very difficult. And the rest of the world has similar problems that two income families have become pretty much a necessity. Lastly, it used to be that kids were useful for working the farm. Now, frankly, all they're good for is teaching you how to program your VCR.
Yeah. So I listen to Peter Zion a lot, and basically what you said echoes what he says. And somebody recently asked him, what if the Chinese government was to have a policy that said we want every family to have 3 children now, or they go from the 1-child policy to the 3-child policy? And he said basically that's an impossibility because most of the people in China have moved from the farm to the city, and they're living in small apartments, which are not designed for more than 1 child. And so you're going to have a situation where, it's physically not feasible to raise a family in such a small space. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it just isn't comfortable to do so. So that's a big issue. Now, where countries like Canada, the United States are standing in good stead is that we can still attract people to our countries as long as we aren't, chasing everyone away at the border. And so, even and over too many immigrants coming to Canada, it has been an issue. So the previous government, the Trudeau government, basically had a similar open door policy to what the Biden administration had. It was highly unpopular to many Canadians, and so that's been cut back significantly. But the point is that if we want to, we can attract people to come here because of our standards of living. And Europe has been doing this, but the price that Europe is paying is they're seeing their culture changing dramatically in the process. What was it? Muammar Gaddafi made a comment that Islam is going to take over Europe through immigration and population growth in those countries where there have been already a large number of Islamic migrants. But anyway, like Ron said, countries like India are probably fine for the time being. But
no, the trend is also down.
Yeah. The other thing though that comes in, and this goes back to artificial intelligence and robotics, is that we may be able to replace, like China might not need to have 3 children per person, they might just need to have 3 robots per person, and that can keep their economy going. And that becomes, as Elon Musk likes to say, um, what's his phrase? Essentially an unlimited economy when you have when you can make your workers.
Yeah, and we may be able to do artificial wombs, and that the kids will be raised by robots, and women may be able to stay at home again, or I
Yeah,
don't
it
know.
was in Brave New World. See, that was invented 100 years ago, just not in real life. It was science fiction.
Yeah, and if it happens, I see it happen in China first.
Hmm. And of course, also in science fiction, it's uh, the uh, the idea in predictions by government statisticians and others that robotics will decrease the jobs. That'll be It could be devastating to society. The jobs will go down. It was in Player Piano by the author Kurt Vonnegut, and that was shortly after World War II. So it's logically we're going to replace the workers, but in fact, by the time you get the programmers and the maintenance for the robots, we might still need all those women working there, even though they replaced virtually all of the. At one point, they said if the phone system increases by X amount, every woman in America will have to be a telephone operator. Well, the phone capacity has increased many times X, and there's virtually no operators. There are virtually no lamplighters. In The Little Prince, there's a story about the army of lamplighters all across the world. And as the sun goes down in one place, the lamplighters come out, and in the other side of the world, the lamplighters are putting out the lights as the sun comes up. They're all gone. There's only the guys that come out when the photocell goes out or something of the mechanism goes out and the light stays on. The repair crew comes out. Rather than that, and I was an elevator operator when I was 16. I made it go. Not too
Being an
many of
elevator
us.
operator had its ups and downs, didn't it?
It did. Have you been waiting years to use that line since
I
the last
haven't
time you
had
used
to.
it?
But
Okay.
actually, you raise an interesting question there, Roger.
Mhm,
And let me simply give you a quote, which you all
mhm.
know, which is idle hands are the devil's workshop.
Yeah, that was one of the themes
And
in
as we
Player Piano.
successfully, as we successfully replace human workers with robots, we're going to have a lot of people with too much time on their hands, and
Mhm,
that can create some major social unrest.
mhm,
Now, I don't think we're going to see it in 2026. On the other hand, I think to some degree we are seeing it. I think we're seeing a lot of people saying AI is taking our jobs. No, it's not.
mhm,
Productivity is, but the productivity isn't just AI, it's just better machines. Nevertheless,
mhm,
we have more people unemployed, we have more social upheaval, and I think it is something which we are going to have to think about. We're going to see more dissatisfaction.
mhm,
We'll see some significant changes in voting
mhm,
and in demand for activities, everything else that are going to occur. Some people, like Musk, have said, oh, no, no. AI and computers will give everybody free time, and we're going to have so much richer population. To which my
mhm,
response as an economist is, why am I, as a capitalist, going to pay people who aren't doing anything just
mhm.
because it doesn't cost me a lot to hire a robot? I don't buy it.
Well, you might want to do it if you want to avoid a repeat of the French Revolution. But
Yeah.
there are a lot of Republicans who support UBI and this sort of thing too. So it's not
Yeah.
just Democrats that are calling
Yeah,
for it.
UBI, UBS. Yeah, and I can do not my prediction, but prediction that I heard that, but longer term is there are going to be a lot of problems and social unrest because of different issue, but a lot of jobs are going to disappear, and eventually we may end up with four categories of people: people who are entrepreneur and buying new businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We have people who refuse to use AI at all. I know Peter Diamandis called them new Hamish, like the Hamish, but they will stuck in the early 21st century, not using AI at all. And have other will try to build a new civilization in space, will go to Mars. And most
That's our
people,
next topic.
and most people will probably go to cyberspace because if you have a infinite or nearly infinite resource and you can do whatever virtual reality you want, like the Matrix, but more positive, then most people will go into space and have the time of their life, adventures, whatever they want.
Okay, and
Video games.
we
But
didn't
that's not
I,
20
solve
one
everything,
thing.
but we could get optimistic or pessimistic for space and other maybe space and outer wet space on the oceans for advances or worries, a la Don't Look Up. For our next topic, so I was going to say the kind of like the positive, we might find a real Planet Nine. Pluto got demoted, but they now say some of the very distant objects outside of Neptune, because Pluto sometimes goes inside the orbit of Neptune, and that's another reason why it got demoted. But now they have, like, of course, the Webb, was it James Webb telescope has been going a couple of years. The Vera Rubin down in Chile is in a high plain over a desert. It's a high desert plain. They can do infrared. It's the most giant uh, observing camera that they've ever pointed up at the sky, and they're going to do the same thing that was done by Clyde Tombaugh that found Pluto, the now minor planet, because he found there was take a picture and he would flash a light to a second picture, and that would show anything moving. Well, now they're just doing it a millionfold, or maybe in more, maybe 10 million fold better than Clyde Tombaugh could do it. So they'll hopefully find something that might be several Earth sizes. It could be much as like 6 times Earth in mass. That would be a big thing. They just started the last couple 3 months breaking the not breaking it in, starting to use the system and getting better at it.
And also, artificial intelligence again is going to play a huge part in that. Like the advances and the data coming from these new telescopes, whether it's Vera Rubin or uh, any of the other ones, there's so much data coming in that we don't have enough people to look at it and analyze it all. And so much of the work is just being done by AI, and then
Mm.
we're able to just look at the really interesting stuff. Same thing with, of course, what goes on at CERN with nuclear collisions and so on.
Mm.
Yeah, so as far as moving to space, obviously we got, I think the Artemis program's going to the moon this year.
I think they're
Not a chance.
yeah. They it's going to be a lot slower. That was the negative side.
Well, okay, they were
They already
scheduled
delayed
to.
like 1 year because what they have to do is get up a couple flights and load up a big fuel tank so they can send spacecraft to the moon.
Right. Sorry, let me rephrase that. We're going to go around the moon this year, right?
Oh, possibly. That's NASA is not. They don't have the money to do the crazy thing. I think it was like up to almost 1% of the U.S. GDP, or of the or not GDP, pardon me, of the U.S. budget was going to space
It was
at
almost
one point.
5%.
And,
In 1967, it was about 5%, 4.5, almost
okay.
5%.
Ah,
That and the Vietnam War were sinking all the money.
yeah. Then Vietnam took it, and of course the biggest thing was they looked at the moon. That's pretty dry and dismal. Mars was still possible green. They got closer. Mars is a desert also. Although with all the probes, I helped document them. I was working at Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which sent the probes from the United States. There could be life underwater. There could be liquids down there. Could be warm enough for things to still be alive, but not something to get to real fast. And the thought is, it's people might lose interest in that one, especially if there's any economic uh, problems. Again, the Vietnam War was one. The ongoing wars. Oh, we didn't even get to the Iran possibly falling apart. Now that's a whole other war.
Yeah, there is
Just
a
can't keep track of them all.
Polymarket predict now 30% it will fall this year.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Iran.
yeah, Dalio and others might well be right this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want, I can put my prediction for or speculation for space for
Okay.
2026. One is what Michael said, that there is a good chance we'll find Planet 9 in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I don't know what percentage, 20, 30%. We'll find it soon, but not necessarily 20, but there is a chance for 20. And another thing we maybe find, and it would going to be huge, is extraterrestrial life. It's probably going to be small microcellular. It either could be in the solar system, either in Mars or Enceladus or Europa,
Mm-hmm.
the moon, or in Jupiter, or Titan. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
the moon of Saturn. And it could be that we can discover in exoplanet in another star system life, or at least we're going to detect oxygen, because free oxygen will not happen in, it's very reactive gas. It will not stay
Yeah.
oxygen. It will react and become CO2 or rust or something.
Yeah.
So if you see free
Yeah.
oxygen,
James
it means
Lovelock was saying that the guy that
if
invented the
we
Gaia
find,
hypothesis.
so if we find a planet with
Mm-hmm.
oxygen, there is a good chance there is life in there. And another topic that touched the AI data center that we
Mm-hmm.
spoke earlier, AI data centers in space. This is a plan for this has become something being in the last month in December. Before that, nobody talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
In space, we have if you go at least above geosynchronous orbit, you have sun probably 24 hours a day, maybe 23 hours a day if it's geosynchronous. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, but you don't need to transmit the energy to Earth. You just need solar panels and you need radiator to emit all the heat. And
Mm-hmm.
once you have that, you can launch a data center in space that has 24/7 solar energy. It's about 4 times more than on
Mm-hmm.
Earth, solar energy on Earth, because you don't have atmospheric conditions, you don't have nights, you don't have
Mm-hmm.
clouds. Uh, so if energy is the concern and large cost will drop from currently it's about $2,000 or $3,000 per kilogram, it's made up to 200 or maybe even $20 per kilogram. And then we are going to see data centers in space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's it.
and I
And
wouldn't
this,
be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing, the first ventures that may be partnering with, Jeff Bezos at Blue Origin or Elon Musk with Starlink or
mm-hmm.
Starship,
Mm-hmm.
or that the Chinese will be able to launch their version of a reusable rocket. But I would imagine that we're going to see somebody seriously looking at mining the asteroids, the moon. And, we talked about pollution, we talked about depopulation and all of these things. Well, we can send our robots into space far less hazardously than we can human beings. And, we're talking about infinite resources. Well, Earth is a finite planet, but there's a heck of a lot of material out in space that we can access. And, eventually, this is way beyond 2026, but, I think O'Neill colonies and those sorts of things are going to be a reality, and space tourism. And we've already seen the first space tourists, but it will become an industry.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, when you talk about the fact we can send out robots, we have to remember that fundamentally we could have done that decades ago, but we were so concerned with the concept of making the heroes out of astronauts that
But we did with Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 and Pioneer and all the rest of those, right?
And all the rovers to Mars.
Yeah, dozens of things have gone to Mars.
It's a planet
I think a couple
populated
dozen made it,
by
and 3 or 4
robots.
dozen tried.
Well, I think even Musk is talking about, sending the robots there to make a place that's livable for the first human pioneers. So robots are definitely part of the scheme.
Yeah, and I would say robots are important, but actually what's really important is to throw off the shackles of a mental disease, which I call barsumophilia or planetophilia, because we have to go to another planet. That's the only thing we know of. And going to the moon now is another stunt, just like the Apollo program. But the Apollo program, it was a space race with the communists in the Soviet Union. And they were willing to risk their lives. And amazingly, we only had a few casualties doing that. They had the fire on the pad in one case. A number of astronauts died in training accidents flying, and the Soviets lost several astronauts when that we know of. But the customers right now are all on Earth. Even a big space data center would be supporting Earth. There's no customers at all on the moon. And so you go this wild thing to get to the moon, robots could do it better. Whereas if you've got a as cheap as possible thing with a lot of ways that Musk hasn't even thought of yet, but between Musk and the other people and the Chinese catching up, they can evolve the technology to where tourists go up into orbit, then they get the prices down, and to maintain the tourist hotels, you'd have shuttlecraft. Well, if you've got enough shuttlecraft, then you can just go to the moon and drop off a habitat. And if one gets in trouble, you have 2 other shuttles that would, either one of which could go out and do a rescue. Right now, they're talking about sending crews out with backup plans that, like NASA, they would say, "Oh, we got to send another rocket. Oh, the weather isn't good today. Oh, it'll take us a couple weeks to get the thing set up." Well, these people are running out of air and water and food in short order, and to redo something that was done half a century ago, so.
I think go ahead. Sorry.
When we talk about building things in space, because one of my favorite technologies is 3D printing.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have one in my office. They're wonderful things. But I think we're not going to make anything space level from the one in my office.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the concept of new types of development and technology for production is something which is starting to develop. We're already making houses using 3D printing technology.
Mhm.
And a lot of other things similarly can be built not using the old-fashioned mold something, have a human screw it together, but or a robot instead of a human screw it together, but actually printing in vitro effectively. And I think that will be an interesting effect more and more as it happens, as technology develops for production using other techniques.
Mhm. Mhm.
What I was going to say was that what's different about these plans to go to the moon this time is that the plans are to set up permanent bases. It's not just a publicity stunt. China has talked about having permanent colonies on the moon. The
Mhm.
United States, in response, has said that they will as well. And there are good reasons to build industries and science experiments on the moon. For instance, the far side of the moon is the best place to set up a radio telescope in the whole solar system. And of course, you got all sorts of minerals that are readily available there, like titanium, which could be used here on Earth. You can do all the mining, the processing with the solar energy available, and then just send the finished products back to Earth. So there are good reasons to go to the moon, and also the whole idea of building up, as you were talking about, space tourism between low Earth orbit and geostationary, and then going on to the moon and Mars.
Yeah, ultimately.
Yeah, those things have other benefits like zero G processing for crystals and chemicals and various other things. So I see it as being something that is going to be economically viable, especially as we're continuing to see the cost of putting
Mhm.
material into orbit decrease with these reusable rockets. Um, I think the future for space technology is definitely very bright.
Yeah.
The moon also have He3, helium-3, which could be used for fusion energy generation, which a lot cleaner than the deuterium. That's one option, but that's not the next year. This is 15 or 20 years in the future. Another prediction I could put for space, if I can guess, is
Might as
we're
well.
going to see
Hey, I think
we're
we're to
going to
the
say
end,
the
so we can go out into space and out into the ocean or anything else that we like now. We've done our main topics. Go, go for
okay.
it.
So that's refueling in space. Also, that's maybe something we'll see in 2026.
Yes.
That's what, okay. Well, in that case, I will dive into the oceans and the deeper Earth. Going back to one of the space pioneers, Arthur C. Clarke, was talking about, well, you want to look for minerals in space and all, which is good. He says, but really, we have a lot of minerals on Earth, and our minds have only gone down a mile or two. We could go a lot deeper. That would be, we could say, robots, like some of the mines in South Africa, gold mines. We have like 100 and some degrees in there and humid. Wouldn't bother a robot. Even, yes, sir. Michael, did you say?
My my uncle actually was working on a project to extract minerals during the desalination process. So you talk
Mm-hmm.
about going down hundreds of feet or miles. There's a lot of stuff that's in the water right at the surface,
Mm-hmm.
which we could extract.
Mm-hmm. If your energy source is good enough, you just have to pump a lot of water through to do the processing. In fact, uranium for fission reactors would be unlimited by that. Plus, better processing, laser enrichment, which may have been suppressed. There might be inventions that are secret right now that would make huge quantities of uranium available. Or with solution mining, somebody said we have mine waste, water that comes out that's pollution, that can supply all the rare earth elements we're really looking for.
Yeah.
It's like, why not just use those materials? So there's a whole bunch of things that goes back to our things. If you let industry go and do its thing and make a profit, they can find new ways of doing things. For instance, there's a number of, and Jeff and I, we've talked about electric vehicles don't have to run on lithium batteries. That was the first big breakthrough that made it even possible to have more affordable electric cars. But hopefully there'll be some better ways to do it. And if there were a breakthrough, it'd have to be maybe a couple orders of magnitude better, but it's conceivable that it would happen. In that case, then your solar farm out in the Mojave, you just charge up your battery and drive it into town, drive it into Vegas and run the casinos for the next month. You can do these things if the technology goes, if you keep working at it. And that's happened to let's see, Buckminster Fuller was talking about it. I think he referred to it as dematerialization. Other people say doing more with less. Another person called Moore is talking about the typical soda pop can now is about 16% of the mass of what they used to be. Yeah, you can't use them as giant ice storage things in your cooler. If you freeze your Coca-Cola, it blows the can apart because they can't take it anymore. But they use a lot less. Plastics, my boy, as in The Graduate said, plastics have replaced so many things that were done. Likewise, the nanotechnology is looking to make the better solar panels, the better anodes for batteries. That's like, hey, if government just says this is a goal, we'll pay you a bonus if you do it. Instead of I always took notes for committees that were trying to do a different solar power thing or a space infrared telescope, and they would decide on every little bit of technology, and government contractors would do it. They managed to do it in the really expensive ways. Usually, my favorite was somebody wanted to just test solar power. I mean, ocean thermal energy conversion. So they wanted to have a low temperature difference between. They were going to use waste heat from a power plant, and they were trying to get some electricity. Well, here's the thing: the blacktop road that will go to this facility will be this big. The hurricane link fence will be this big. The power lines, the poles with lights will be this amount. They spent $1 million writing the plan for something that a couple electricians and a couple three welders could do, and they really didn't need to have a big fence around it. Maybe a few cameras and a burglar alarm. They could have done it all. Government does not do things well. So that gets to the subversive thought of the day about between space and a lot of stuff we got right here. Mm-hmm.
Well, again, government does not do things well. That of course, is a political statement. you might take a look at what China has done with high-speed rail, for instance, and compare that to all the rest of the world combined. But in terms
There's
of
some questions about how well their tofu trestles work.
yeah,
It's not a guarantee, but I would say it could do well. Like NASA did well in the 1960s. The US government was able to build the Manhattan Project. So
Mhm.
government know how to run large project well, but the government in the West today don't know how to do that.
yeah.
China knows.
Yeah, as far as dematerialization goes, I mean, this little device here, it's replaced, video camera, tape recorder, the old traditional telephone, all of these things, and has AI built into it automatic as well. So that's a perfect example of how technology is actually using less material to provide more services um, to the world, and that's a process that's just going to continue because the material is the expensive part in a lot of examples of technology. So the less material you can use, the less expensive the end product will be, and the more profit there will be for the manufacturer.
Yeah, or Starlink replacing systems of cables and whatnot, and not to mention can be all over in the oceans, which is another one I've got is the greening of Earth, and I've actually seen some articles talking about the possibility now. If we had a lot more phytoplankton growing in the ocean, we might decrease the net carbon that people are putting out, or carbon dioxide, excuse me, so that that can happen. Although it's got to be done by business. If government does it, it's not going to make it a profit.
I think that's something which, when we talk about government does things well, there doesn't do things well. That's where we get ourselves confused because it's a matter of what the incentive is and the timeline. Now, to make a profit in space back in the 1960s, it was a long timeline. There was no immediate profit that would result. So the only way it was going to happen was if someone who could afford a long timeline, the government, got heavily involved. Now, with faster timeline and faster responses, Musk and Bezos and a lot of the rest of the world has discovered it is in their best interest. And there's a profit there that'll work. I think with respect to questions, for example, of pollution or whatever, well, economists refer to the tragedy of the commons, which is nobody pays the cost unless the government makes them pay the cost.
Yeah, that's another one.
Yeah. And one thing that government is good at is paying for research that they want to get done. So like, I used to get NASA tech briefs electronically, and they like to point out that for every dollar that was invested in the space program, it had like something like $6.50 of economic benefits in other areas, not to mention all of the technology that came out of building that. We have solar panels today because of the space race.
We're talking about spin-off technologies.
Exactly.
Yeah. I got to correct myself too. It's the government can do quick, short-term research things to find stuff. Like, well, NASA Jet Propulsion Lab was the lead center for developing solar photovoltaic cells and panels and thermal. Actually, they were both. And JPL did research on the idea of mobile satellite mobile communication, talking to satellites, which is now what we have in a lot of places. It's just then government I mean, business then takes it. Now there are companies that have fabulous comsats that have gotten better over the decades, and we don't know, and most people don't even care. It's just it's there. It does its thing. Likewise, the photovoltaics have gotten better, although there's the economic issues of night and day that make them an expense that people don't realize or appreciate if they do recognize it. So yeah, government can do the research. It's just making it go. It's like if the whole world was run by the Department of Motor Vehicles, it wouldn't run really well.
That's
Although
right.
California DMV has done better in the last few years, so I can't say that too loud.
Well, I would say that
As far
COVID
as
is a wonderful example of a technology accelerant with questionable publicity. Nevertheless, it's taken communications to a whole different level, and what we're doing now was possible before COVID. In fact, I was on Zoom back in 2017, but everybody didn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's there because it became more convenient. I think war is a wonderful example of a unfortunate situation which is relatively good at developing spin-offs,
Mm-hmm.
which make it perhaps profitable if you do not put a cost on human lives,
Mm-hmm.
which
You can,
Jeff, as an engineer, apparently is willing to do. I'm a little bit nervous about it.
well, it's not so much that I think you have to. I mean, we're talking about doing that cost benefit analysis. We're talking about inefficiency of government. We're talking about, you know, the government could say, oh, well, we're just going to make every roadway a divided highway with overpasses and eliminate all traffic lights. Well, that's prohibitively expensive and doesn't make sense in most cases, right? But if you want to have an ultimately safe system, well, you could design that. Maybe we'll get there with smart cars. Who knows? I was going to go in a bit of a darker area. I think in terms of the world, I think we're going to see a lot more cynicism in the general population. We're going to see a lot more anger towards the man or the system or whatever you want to call it. And we're probably going to see increased, I wouldn't doubt it if we see more addictions. The next few years are going to be very tumultuous with AI and robots coming out and taking away jobs, which I think this time is going to be different. There will be jobs created, but there will certainly be, trucking, taxi, all those delivery jobs are on the block at this time, and that's I think everybody can agree that's clear that those jobs might not be coming back to human beings if we allow them to do that, and we have to figure out how we're going to pay for all these unemployed people, and maybe it'll come out of taxing the robots, or who knows? That's a discussion for another day. But I think we're going to see a lot more despondency. We're with the fake news and the fake nudes and all of the AI stuff that's coming out and deceiving people, essentially, where you can't believe what you're seeing anymore. I've been duped several times by things I've seen on social media. And social media itself is often a toxic arena. So I think we're probably going to see more drug overdoses, more suicides, unfortunately. And I don't know that we have a good solution for that.
Well, I would say that if you look historically, Chairman Mao, who made a number of mistakes in China, nevertheless did realize that productivity itself was not necessarily going to solve a whole bunch of problems. So initially, at least, he was worried about, can we put everybody to work and keep the population occupied and busy? Now, he didn't do it in a way that I particularly would support, but I think he asked a question that we should be asking ourselves as a country and as a world is, what are we doing to the workers, to the people who are paying for things, etc.? And yes, as you said, Jeff, and as we said earlier, the question of credibility, the question of believability is going to create serious problems for everybody, and it's going to create disaffectation.
I think the solution, we must have some solution, and the solution may be a digital ID. So you will know if a specific post was done by a human, and you will know, maybe you will have like something similar to the ranking in Google or in Amazon, how reliable that person is. But most of all, we need the proof of human, and that's the two main approach I hear so far is a digital ID that the government impose or the European Union impose. Another one is something that can be used through blockchain, which is very, very, very difficult to hack at the moment. So if you can tie your ID to blockchain, you can create it without government control.
Yeah, and that's the issue with it, because it's otherwise you're stepping on a landmine with if the digital ID goes to everybody and the government can get a hold of it, well, damn, you've got Google, which already has all that,
Well,
but not quite as much as in, say, the People's Republic of China,
Well, as a simple
CCP.
example of the thing that I'm concerned about with respect to this, Google Nano Banana, their AI generation for pictures is incredibly good. And in fact, there's some of my pictures which are more believable than I am. But they put a lovely little star diamond in the lower right-hand corner so that people can look at it and say, oh, this is AI generated. Now, it turns out there's software which will take that diamond out. And as we've all discovered with just about every attempt to capture the technologies, it's an ongoing war. There will always be ways to avoid those digital IDs. And frankly, as people discover the ways to avoid it, I think credibility will drop even further. Now, Ron's suggestion of blockchain to permit multiple ways of confirming, as opposed to the one-stop shop where people just do Google, and there's a lot of misinformation on Google. It's not as bad as the misinformation that's generated by different AIs. And I want to say different AIs becomes an important question at some point in this. ChatGPT is particularly prone to telling you what it thinks you want to hear. And so it's going to be perhaps worse for bad guesses. It's not hallucinations. They're bad guesses. And I've got writings explaining why the difference in those two. Google is going to look at what's out there and see, whereas others, Claude will use a certain amount of intellectual response on that. Perplexity will look more like a blockchain. And frankly, Grok is going to look like Elon Musk. So this is what we have to ask ourselves as we're trying to increase the credibility is, realistically, can we? and I think Ron's suggestion of blockchain probably is the best one I've heard so far. Again, Perplexity works kind of in that concept, but we're going to have a lot of problems, and we're not going to solve it just by putting a little diamond at the bottom of our pictures.
Well,
Okay.
I think we've been at it now for just looks like about 2 hours, and I think I really enjoyed the conversation. You guys have definitely added to what Roger and I normally do. So I appreciate you coming out. Maybe this would be a good time for some final comments.
Yeah, maybe a minute or two for everybody. Who'd want
I
to?
can start.
Okay.
I'll just say that I think that the future looks bright, but there's a lot of dark spots in between. And the next year and the next few years, I think, are going to be pretty tumultuous. We are seeing the dissolution of institutions that we've relied on, and I'm talking largely about the United States anchoring the world economy and being a trusted partner and ally, to going steps that make it less so, from the perspective of a foreigner, at least. And like I said, I'm concerned about the mental health of the people in general. And but at the same time, I'm optimistic that we're going to see improvements in healthcare, and we're going to see improvements in technology. We're going to see improvements in more resources to more people. I firmly believe that we can see an end to global hunger and lack of water, for instance, within the next decade, and we'll see definite steps being made this year in that direction. Of course, wars are going to happen, and unfortunately, that's going to also continue. And if we go to a world like it was before World War I, where it becomes spheres of influence instead of global partnerships, that I think is a more dangerous world and more unstable than what we've seen since the Pax Americana at the end of the Second World War. My 2 bits.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, who's next?
Yeah, maybe also just to put some blurb. Yeah, I think I see a lot of chaos in the near future. I see time of turbulence. We may see economic collapse. We may see countries collapse. Pax Americana is definitely coming to an end, which means all the global institutions that were working since World War II are going to end or going to be replaced by new institutions that are not yet ready. But I think the future will be bright, but together is going to be very turbulent and problematic. And when I say bright, I mean we're going to reach a post-scarcity society where everything will be very, very cheap to produce, very, very cheap to make. People will have more free time, which you could say it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. I hope I will have more free time, and you can take other projects, other things you like to do. Yeah, so that's about it. Bright future, but chaotic time before that.
Okay, short and sweet. That's good.
I'd like to point out, when I was born, there weren't computers on our desks, there weren't cell phones, and despite the fact that the UN has declared it to be a fundamental human right, nobody had fast access to the internet. Have things gone wrong in the process? Sure. Is the world better off? Yes. And I think fundamentally, as I listen to the conversation we've had here, we have been optimistic in the long run with a lot of pessimism or concern about the fact that there will be dislocation in the short run. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't stayed with 2026, is because of our natural sense of optimism. But I think the world consistently gets better and more wonderful, and it will continue to. But The world is never going to be a placid place, and the next year or two are going to show that. And Roger, let you finish
Okay,
it up.
thank you on that, and I'll start fresh. So keep myself honest. 2 minutes max. I guess I better go with what everybody was saying. That in the long term, it's a very optimistic thing. It, the the short term, the worry and things to do is if we probably number one, don't panic. Douglas Adams had it down there. Yeah. Number two, don't lie to make what you want to have happen because that will bite you. That's what governments and true believers do. Number three, although maybe it's one of the most important, is let the market make it happen. The government can do heroic things here and there, but if you let the markets go, the traders are doing things. The point which People's Republic of China was trying to copy, the Belt and Road Initiative, was trying to recreate something that happened with the Silk, what's called the Silk Road, which was really more ships than on land. But traders would maybe only go, a few, a week or so's ride with a mule train or a camel train delivering something to make a profit, but they got all the way from China to Europe and back, and they went to Africa and back from China. The government did a big program, spent a fortune sending huge fleets, and then gave up on doing it. But the traders continued like for 1,000 years until massive shipping back in the European age of discovery finally replaced it. Oh, you can see I got to be good there. So it's the traders, the workers, the farmers, the ranchers that slowly get things better. They breed better cattle. They have find ways to irrigate, find ways to use less water. Indoor agriculture, which is trying to get started. A lot of those companies went bust, but that's what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs. But it's doing great things. You name it, there's new technologies coming. And so, yeah, I'll go with that optimistic thing. We're going to see robots doing most of the work on Mars and the asteroid belt if we live long enough here. So I better take my vitamins.
Yeah, we didn't
Right.
spoke about biotechs and life extension.
Yeah, all those things. So, yeah, hey,
Um,
everybody, send me a 100 pager, roughly 100 pages, not too much more, or it could be less. So I can put it. I'll post this, and hey, we'll mention your websites, your books, and so hey, if
I
people
think you meant
see it,
100 words, not 100 pages.
yes, I did. Thank you for that editorial comment. Okay, I think we've done it all, and I'll record it and hopefully have it
All right,
posted.
and if you're one of our fans, please spread the word and join us next time. Give us a like and share us on
Subscribe.
social media.
Yeah, subscribe to this this uh, YouTube channel. We, the more times we're there, the more people can see us because they'll boost us up. The more people that open our things. Hey, you might even be interested in some of the things that we've said before. So anyway, happy 2026. We had a delay from a medical crisis at this end last week, but we finally got together. So it was great meeting you, Ron, and good having you
Thank you.
again, Michael and Jeff. We'll see what we can do next week if you're interested, but we'll talk about that later.
All right,
And
sounds good.
if you want, send me the link and I will post it on my platform.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe you can copy everything over and put it on your website, or certainly send the link to people. Great.
Yeah, I'll talk with Jeff about that.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
All right. Good
All right.
night, all, and hey, come on again another time. We can check things, especially as a science fiction writer. And I'll contact you about a science fiction club, the Worlds of Wonder, which is science fiction and fantasy. Anyway, good night, all, and talk to you again another time.
All right. Good night.
Mm-hmm.
Right.